Hello and welcome to TVB News. A whale carcass was found in waters off Shelter Island in Sai Kung. Preliminary investigations indicate the carcass belonged to the Brutus whale that appeared in the area recently. Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department officers have arrived at the site to carry out further investigations. Timothy Lee tells us more.
The whale's body was found adrift belly up in the waters to the south of Shelter Island in Sai Kung. At least 2 injuries were seen on the back of the body. The whale was still alive this morning. Hours later, at around 11 a.m., authorities received reports about its death. Marine police were deployed to the area to prevent other vessels from getting close to the carcass. Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department officers also arrived at the scene to conduct an investigation. The carcass will be towed to the west dam of the High Island Reservoir to perform an autopsy. Preliminary investigations indicated that the body belonged to the Brutus whale that appeared in Sai Kung in recent weeks. Some locals shared their thoughts on the tragedy. This woman said a lot of people were urged not to approach the whale. She said it's unfortunate for a rare animal to meet its fate in such a way. This ship owner noted the whale suffered injuries to its back and that the rising heat in the seawater probably accelerated its demise. Earlier this month, a Brutus whale with an estimated length of 7 meters appeared off the shores of Shelter Island in Sai Kung. Sources said the animal had a visible injury on its back. The Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department believes the wound was not caused recently, adding that the whale had the ability to eat and swim at the time and did not show signs of sickness. A spokesperson from the Hong Kong Dolphin Conservation Society emphasized that vessels and other vehicles getting too close to the whale would have played a major role in adding pressure on the animal and in turn weakening its immune system. Authorities and other conservation groups remind residents not to travel close to whales on vessels and avoid endangering other marine life. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The figures on the city's GDP growth last quarter were released today, showing an increase of 1.5% year-on-year, indicating an economic slowdown. The figures were worse than earlier estimates by authorities, as growth dropped by 1.3 percentage points on a quarterly basis. The government hopes to boost the economy via tourism and private consumption, but some analysts believe they will have a limited effect. Timothy Lee reports.
Hong Kong may have returned to pre-pandemic normalcy, but it's still far from reaching a full economic recovery. Advanced estimates on Hong Kong's gross domestic product from the previous quarter were revealed today, showing an increase of 1.5% year-on-year. That's a decrease from the first quarter's GDP increase of 2.9% year-on-year by 1.3%. Among major GDP components, private consumption stood alone in maintaining economic growth. Imports and exports both dropped by over 10%, while government consumption dipped by over 9%. The government emphasized the economy is still on track for recovery, as consumption and tourism numbers experience a rebound before the end of the year. According to Immigration Department records, the number of people leaving the city outnumbered visitors over the weekend for the last 4 weeks. Lawmaker Peter Xu noted that since the border reopening, many Hong Kongers chose to go on shopping sprees abroad during the weekends, resulting in businesses going quiet. He hopes that the government will implement relevant policies to assist the city's economy, such as holding night markets or other nighttime commercial activities. This, as some economic scholars are pessimistic that tourism from the mainland will have a significant effect on economic growth, adding that mainland visitors tend to spend less than visitors from the U.S. and other parts of Asia. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The country's top economic planner, the National Development and Reform Commission, has unveiled a slew of measures to boost domestic spending. They include car purchase incentives and improvements on workers' paid leave system. Jackie Lin with details.
Among the 20 administrative measures to spur the country's consumption sentiment, one target is to stimulate spending on big-ticket items. Coming front and center, motor vehicle sales. Provincial governments are urged not to introduce new car purchase restrictions, but encourage people to trade in their old car for a new one. No discriminatory policies, too, on the sale of non-locally manufactured automobiles. Local officials should work to improve parking supply and conditions. Efforts, too, to step up spending on new energy vehicles with tax breaks to be extended for NEV buyers. More high-quality charging infrastructure should be built, including battery replacement stations. To buoy up domestic tourism and holiday spending, the state planner said the country's paid leave system should be fully implemented. Workers should be encouraged to take leave in batches with flexible working hours. Operators of tourist attractions have been asked to lower ticket prices with free admission on off-peak seasons and longer opening hours for museums. To encourage public consumption and boost the economy, small consumer credit, credit card interest rates, and repayment periods will be optimized. Other measures encompass promotion of food festivals, drama festivals, as well as rural and green consumption. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Hong Kong Airlines has canceled all flights to and from Okinawa tomorrow. This as Typhoon Kanun edges closer to Japan's Okinawa prefecture. Canceled flights include HX676 and HX658 departing from the SAR, and HX679 and HX659 departing from Okinawa. The airline said customers affected by the cancellation will have their refund fees waived. Meanwhile, Hong Kong Express said its flights to the Japanese island have not been affected by the weather, but urges travelers to regularly check for updates on its website. Saudi Arabia will host a Ukraine-organized peace summit in early August, seeking to find ways to start negotiations with Russia. However, Russia has not been invited to the summit. This as drone attacks damaged 2 buildings early Sunday, a few kilometers from the Kremlin. Russia claims Ukraine was responsible. Matthew Bray reports.
A summit will apparently take place in Jeddah, according to Ukrainian officials. The Ukrainian peace formula has 10 points, which are supposedly designed to, among other things, restore Ukraine's borders and bring those responsible for causing war to a tribunal. Saudi Arabia has not acknowledged the summit is taking place. Other peace plans have been floated during this war. So far, nothing has proved workable. The Kremlin said Monday there are no grounds for peace talks at this time. A video obtained by Reuters shows a largish explosion in Moscow on Sunday, apparently caused by one of 3 downed drones. Russia's defense ministry claims such drones were Ukrainian. Nobody was hurt. Meanwhile, in another area, the Moskva city business district, there was only damage to the facade of the building. One of the buildings attacked is home to 3 government ministries as well as flats, according to Russian media. These attacks, which Ukraine doesn't acknowledge in keeping with its security policy, reflect a pattern of deeper strikes within Russia. These have occurred since Kyiv began what it calls a counter-offensive. Ukraine leader Volodymyr Zelensky claimed that war is returning to Russia, something he called a natural and absolutely fair process. Zelensky also added he expects Russian attacks on Ukraine's energy system to occur once the cold weather returns. Meanwhile, 2 people were killed and 4 injured in Ukraine's shelling of Donetsk city. It has been under Russian control since 2014. But Ukraine troops hold positions on its outskirts. Matthew Bray, TVB News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has reviewed a parade of warships and nuclear submarines in St. Petersburg. Giving a speech, Putin announced the Navy would get another 30 ships this year. 45 vessels took part in the annual Navy Day event. Around 3,000 Navy personnel also took part in a parade on land. Putin spoke of the task of building up the strength of the Navy, but made no mention of what it terms its special military operation in Ukraine. 4 African heads of state attended Sunday's event. They were invited after a Russia-Africa summit in St. Petersburg. Welcome back. West African nations have given Niger's coup leaders 1 week to reinstate the president, and they have threatened to use force if their demand is not met. President Mohamed Bazoum was detained last week, and military generals are now running the country. But within Niger, there appears to be support for the new regime, with groups celebrating and attacking the embassy of former colonial power France. David Garrett reports.
The French embassy in Niger on fire. Emmanuel Macron's government in Paris condemned the attack. The army was able to break up the mob and the group moved on. These aerial shots show thousands converging on a square in Niamey. They support the removal of democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum from office. These people think the new men in charge can bring stability to the West African nation of 25 million. General Abdourahmane Chiani has declared himself ruler and says he can stop a jihadist insurgency. On the ground, people held banners blaming France for their problems and poverty. In response to the coup, France, the EU, IMF and World Bank have cut off funding for Niger, one of the world's poorest nations. These demonstrators denounced France and waved Russian flags. Russia and the private army, the Wagner Group, want to help. Yevgeny Prigozhin has offered military support to Niger's new leaders, praising the coup as an anti-colonial struggle. These supporters of the takeover want new international partners.
I would like also to say to the European Union, African Union and ECOWAS, please stay out of our business.
The mother suspected of abandoning her son at Kwangwa Hospital earlier this month was arrested on suspicion of child abuse on Saturday night. Today, she appeared in court and was granted bail. The 37-year-old defendant was granted $5,000 bail, pending her next appearance in court on September 11th. She had to surrender her travel documents to authorities. She is not allowed to leave the city and must report to the police twice a week. The woman was charged with child abuse after abandoning her 12-year-old son at Kwangwa Hospital on the 21st of last month. She and her son had traveled to Hong Kong from the mainland earlier this month. She said she did so out of the belief that her child could acquire a better education in the city. A vigil is being held this evening for the late singer-songwriter Coco Lee. Family, friends, and fans of the pop star gathered at Hong Kong Funeral Home to pay their respects. The late singer was born in Hong Kong and attended school in the U.S. At 19 years old, Lee began her career as a Mando-pop singer before breaking into the American market. She was also the first Chinese American to perform at the Oscars. Early this month, Lee's sister posted online saying Lee attempted suicide at home after suffering from depression for years. Lee later died in hospital at the age of 48. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Pearl Magazine is up shortly.